See Bob. Hey, Bob, great to see you, my friend. It's
Hey,
been too
Josh.
long.
Yes.
And I see Ben. What's happening,
Yeah.
brother?
Hey, Josh. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. And who else is on?
Steve Shapiro's here.
Hey, Steve. How you doing? I just spoke to our buddies at BASF this morning.
Yeah, I hope that went well.
It went great. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Good.
That's awesome. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and begin? And again, if there's flashing things behind me at some point, just ignore that. So
Hey,
I had a
Josh.
couple thoughts to kick in on, and of course, as always, we want to make this interactive, and any way that we can be helpful or of service is no problem. So one of the things I was hoping to just kind of start with is introducing ourselves to bureaus. There's been one question I've received a lot from folks that have been to our boot camps is like, okay, now what's the best way to actually make an introduction? So I thought we'd maybe riff on that a little bit. Here's what I've heard from bureaus is a bad way to do this. The bad way is the cut and paste generic email like, hey, I know Josh or Jordan, and could I set up a call to work with your bureau? We're getting a little bit of pushback from that, not because they're not interested, but because it lacks personalization and specificity. So I thought I'd share a couple kind of do's and don'ts, and then I'd be curious to hear if anyone has any thoughts or feedback on it. The first one is doing a warm intro and making it personal so it's not cut and paste. I think that really is going to make a difference. It's not like we're going out to 30,000 potential partners here. We're going out to 10 or 20. We're taking the time to write something that's a little bit more personal and trying to make a real connection. One of my bureau friends, who's the CEO of the bureau, sent me over a couple good email intros and bad email intros, not from our folks, but just in general, to give me a flavor of it, because I was asking him about it. And the bad ones sound like this. Dear, fill in the blank name, I speak on leadership. I'd love to talk to you because I know we could do a bunch of work together. How's next Tuesday at 11? Now, that's not an inappropriate email, but it's not great. The ones that he sent me that were better were something like this. Dear, fill in the blank name, I see that you focus often on leadership speakers, but it seems as I've been reviewing your website that there perhaps is there's a hole for those that talk about diversity in leadership. I thought it might be a good fit for me being a diversity speaker where I could add some real value for your customers, and seeing the arc of your bureau, it seems like you work with people in the financial services industry. So I think the fit could be ideal. So already you're personalizing it, and you're kind of talking about what you speak on, why your message is important to their customers and to their bureau. And then he's shared with the emails would go on to say something like, in addition, I'm sure that you're facing these issues at your own bureau. And perhaps as a way to get to know each other, I'd be happy to hop on a call to discuss diversity in leadership at your bureau to see if that's something that I could add some value, and we might be able to get to know each other in the context of me helping you and sharing some ideas that could benefit your company. So it's about giving more than taking. It's personal, it's relevant, that type of thing. So the sort of do's and don'ts that I wrote down in preparation for today is making a real connection. Make sure you tell them what you speak about. I know it sounds like sort of duh, but I've seen some of these generic ones that, I'm a keynote speaker, can we talk? And then the bureau is thinking like, I get 80 of these emails a day. How is that relevant? Whereas if Ben's talking about, hey, I speak about people achieving the impossible or something, wow, now at least you're hooking them to a degree. The other couple pieces of advice I have would be, ask for a specific next step. So instead of saying, if you're interested, maybe we could chat someday, or let me know if you want to talk, it should be, I'd love to hop on a 11-minute phone call with you sometime in the next 2 weeks. How does Tuesday at 11 or Wednesday afternoon at 3 look for you? So you're making it like a multiple choice. You're making it clear what's the very specific next step that you're hoping to do. I think you want to make sure that you answer what's your difference. So if you are saying, I talk about, using Bob, for example, who's on the phone, your whole point about the performance of medicine and blending the performing arts with healthcare, that's such a cool differentiator from others who speak on healthcare. So instead of you saying, well, I'm a healthcare speaker, you're zeroing in, as a practicing physician for many years, now I speak about the performance of medicine. It's just concise, and it's separating you from the competitive set as opposed to the generic, like I'm a keynote speaker.
Right.
And then anything that you can do to show that it's easy to sell you. So something like, I often find that with an only 15-minute call, customers are really excited to book me, or I make the sales process really easy, or I have tons of additional resources to help you if we collaborate, making it easy to sell. So one of the key kind of words that bureaus are looking for is easy and simple and support and all that kind of stuff. So you might want to try playing to that. And the last thing I'll say before opening it up for some conversation is you won't always get an immediate response. That's just the world that we live in, and they're very busy people too. And I think too often we give up on the first or second attempt. I would say it's a balance between being frequent and diligent and follow-up, but not being annoying. So not that you do this, but if you were pegging them every other day, hey, come on, let's hop on that call and just me, then you become an annoyance. On the other hand, if you're respectful and every 10 days or so you reach out with another piece of information or offer to help or something that is relevant and personal to them, it's just going to be a much better result. The only other thing I'll say is if there's any way to find some personal connection, it's great. So if you look up on LinkedIn and you realize that the bureau person went to the same university that you did, awesome. Or they love a sports team, or maybe they're involved in a particular charity and you feel passionate about that cause also. Anything that you can do to make it personal is going to increase the odds of their responsiveness. So with that, questions, thoughts, any observations, or anything that you guys have tried that you'd like to share with others on the line?
I have a question. So I found that I've done quite a few of those initial phone calls with the bureaus, and great conversations, and 99% of the time nothing comes of it, and that my bookings seem to come from a few bureaus that really understand the keynote. And I guess I'm actually kind of answering my question as I say it. The idea of going to speak in a bureau seems to ring home true with me, because I guess the question is, after you have that initial conversation, it's a good conversation, they're excited, you send them the assets, you're up on the site. What is the next step so that they actually sell you? Because obviously they can only sell so many people in a day. And I found that you quickly probably just get forgotten.
Yes, Ben, that's an awesome question. I'm just going to put a pin in that for 1 second, just so we finish off on the outreach question, but then we'll get right back to that because that's an awesome question.
Okay, cool.
Bob or Steve, any other questions or thoughts or observations sharing on the outreach portion of this?
No, but I'm going to jump in on the next topic that you just pinned.
Cool.
On the outreach, have you ever, I know some others have done this, you probably don't need to, but have you ever thrown a gig to a bureau where you've not had a relationship, said, hey, I just landed this nice gig, I'd like you to run it, here's your commission, you get your commission. Have you found that if you do something like that, it leads to a relationship, or is it that's a one-off and you just lost your commission?
Yeah, 100% that can work. So I have done that when I was getting started, and it worked great. In fact, I've a couple times I did that where a direct deal came in, and it's a wonderful way to kickstart a relationship. You're bringing something to them, you're showing that you're value, but even beyond the dollars that they're going to get from it, you're showing that you're an in-demand speaker and that people are booking you. So that immediately separates you from a wide set of the competitors. I think it's great. The only slight caveat is be careful who you do that with, and if you ever want to ask us, we'll let you know. So an example is our good friend Nanette at WWSG. She is she's wonderful. I just adore her, by the way. But she's fairly she's very religious, and she's very. And I was talking to her about that just at this last boot camp, and she said in her particular case that rubs her the wrong way. She says I only want to do it if I'm adding value. It's not even because, but just like in her belief set, that would rub her the wrong way. Where in many other bureaus, they'd be like, that's the best thing ever. Thank you so much for kicking it off. So if you have a question on a one-by-one basis, just ping us. We'll respond instantly.
Josh, one thing that I just did recently with the bureaus, I said to them, on your commission, I'll give you a 50% commission on my first 10 gigs to make them want to push me a little bit harder.
I love it. How did that work?
Well, I'm meeting with them on Tuesday, so that I'll tell you that. I'm having a personal meeting with them.
Wonderful. So that has worked and it gets to Ben's question, like what do you do next once you've got a connection? Spiffs do work. So whether you say I'm going to double the commission or whether you say I'm going to give you an extra $1,000 or something like that, those do tend to work. And also, again, feel free to ask us on a case-by-case basis. Some of those bureau folks are super loyal to their bureau, and some of them are super loyal to themselves as an agent. So I've seen this example, Bob, where you've done that, and the agent says, like one of these, like, hey, can you pay me the commission directly and like mail it to my house, the extra? And then and other times they're like, oh, great, that's awesome. Send it to my bureau because, you know, the head of the bureau will be really happy and helps me meet my quarterly numbers or whatever.
Okay, good.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
Josh, it's Steve Smith. I've been on the entire time. I just couldn't get my name in there at the start. I was just going to say thank you so much for the tips that you just outlined. They're awesome. It's pretty eye-opening that you used the number 80. Do they really get that many per day? That's just one question. The other thing I'll say is I like Bob's idea. I never heard someone think about giving a higher commission than usual. I'd love to hear, Bob, how that turns out. And just, again, just one person's experience. I've given about $10,000 worth of commissions to a bureau over the last 6 months, and they haven't booked a single thing for me. So,
really? Wow, that's a bummer.
That is a bummer. So again, just so we'll say, nice. I'm glad that you're on the call. First of all, I'm always happy to hear from you. I have seen it work. So again, just backing up. So it sucks that it didn't in that case, but I walked into a bureau that I'd never worked with that I kind of knew, and I said, "Listen, I've got this direct deal. Can I run it through you? Not only because it'll give us a chance to work together, but also you'll get to hear from the client, you know, how this went, and furthermore, I hope that this client will develop to something longer term for you. I'm likely only going to do one keynote for them, but perhaps you could sell them keynotes for the next 15 years." And so if you approach it that way, my experience anyway has been that they've been pretty excited about it. And there is, perhaps unlike the case that you're describing, generally the law of reciprocity exists with human beings. So they feel like you brought them something and they kind of owe you one, but for what it's worth. The double commission thing or some type of additional spiff absolutely does work. I've seen it in terms of monetary. I'll give you an extra $1,000 commission. I've seen it in terms of something physical. Like, hey, for the first gig you book with me, I'll give you a brand new Mac. So, you know, the neat thing about that is it's probably less dollars, but it's something physical, and then they have it on their desk, you know, they take it home or whatever, and they see it all the time. Spiffs do tend to work, especially as you're getting things going.
So, Josh, thank you. You mentioned that during the boot camp, and I've done that trick. And believe it or not, with this bureau, that hasn't worked either. But anyway, the other question, or actually the other observation I have is a bureau came to me, which is a total shock. But they set up a telecon, and then on the telecon, we talked for an hour, and they had 10 of their agents on the telecon at the same time. And for me, that was awesome because then I can get 10 people to actually hear my voice, and I answered probably, I don't know, 25 questions. And so that was awesome too. I don't know if you can ask for that in your intro letter or email, excuse me. But boy, that was awesome. And they came back pretty quickly with a strong interest. So that was nice.
Phenomenal. So just we'll cover off on the intro part, and then we'll get into Ben's question. One other thought, Steve, is you mentioned the bureau hasn't responded even though you've offered all these things and they've taken some commissions from you. You know, it's funny, when we think about a bureau, we think about it as a single organism, but really a bureau is an amalgamation of agents. And so in other words, there could be, and we can talk offline about the particular case because I'd love to help you there. We might have some insight, but let's say, making this up fictitiously, let's say there's Sue, and Sue works at awesomeness.speakersbureau.com. Well, Sue may be a bad actor, or maybe she's taking the commission and being really selfish, but the overall bureau may not be. So the other possibility there is maybe we start reaching out to others inside the bureau, perhaps than just in this fictitious example, Sue.
Yeah, copy. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So let's talk now about Ben's question and see if you kind of were hinting at that too. What do you do once you've got some engagement? And so I think that the first part of that call, which by the way, we can even role play what we'd say on the first call, but fast forwarding to Ben's question, there's a few things that you can do next. One thing that I love, and see if you got this directly as a request, but setting up a lunch and learn or a fireside chat. I've done this many times, and it's like this. Hey, I'm going to be in Toronto for another keynote. Martin at Speaker Spotlight, how about I bring in lunch for the gang? They're going to eat anyway at their lunch break. I'll bring in a wonderful spread, and we'll just get to know each other a little bit. It won't be in a big sales pitch. Can I come in next week? And so if they know you're going to be in town and you offer up to bring in lunch or something, that has worked really well. One speaker that I know brought a food truck. He had like a connection, and a food truck showed up, and actually that was a big win, and he's booked several things from them. So I'm kind of like into health food recently, so maybe bring in smoothies or whatever. But the idea is bring in something, whether it's breakfast or lunch, and have a fireside chat with the agents. Awesome. The virtual fireside chat that you did, Steve, is awesome also. So if they're willing to do it, phenomenal. That's great. I wouldn't ask for it up front because it's a big ask, but as you get into a dialogue with them, for sure ask for it. Another suggestion for you. All of us, by definition, have some real value to add. Otherwise, people wouldn't pay us to go deliver keynotes. So why not offer that to a bureau? So, for example, Steve, you have amazing stories and all these amazing things you learned in NASA and astronaut and all this stuff. What if you said, hey, I've learned all these principles. How about I come share them with you at your bureau? And I'll give you a little mini keynote. Worst thing, you learn and get better off. And there's some practical things that you can put to use in your actual bureau. And best case, we have the opportunity to work together. At least you get to see it firsthand. So whatever it is, the thing, like I talk about innovation, someone else talks about something else, offer what you give to audiences to the bureau. It's almost like
Great,
a mini
thanks,
audition.
I will just kind of add on that. I really agree. I did that with executive speakers, and they definitely book the majority of my engagements. So I think it just comes down to, like, how do you create advocates or like evangelists at the bureau? So, and one of the only ways to do that is for them to experience it. They're just going to be able to sell you so much better if they've experienced your keynote. So whether that's getting them to an engagement that you have or going to them to do it, but I find that's the only way to really have someone in your corner, is they have to have been moved personally by it, so that then they can share that and as a result sell that. So it's a good point.
Couple other things, just since we're talking about it. And again, these are just ideas. So if you don't fit for you, don't feel obligated, just sharing ideas. One idea is, if you're going to be in market for whatever reason, and it's not necessarily a competitor, like it wasn't booked through a competitive bureau, or there's no competitive conflict. If you're in New York, you might say to Alec at Gotham Artists, hey, I'm giving a keynote in New York. How about you come on over? And afterwards, we'll buy lunch. So I totally agree. If you can invite a bureau to come see you in action, phenomenal. Another thing that I've seen before, Jordan was telling me about this idea, which I just love, is let's say someone at a new bureau books you. Now, they may have booked you for some random reason. Maybe the client even asked for you and they've never seen you speak. Why not invite them to come to the talk? In other words, I'll do the example. WWSG in Washington, D.C., Nanette books you, and you're giving a talk in Marco Island, Florida. You might say, Nanette, thank you so much. Listen, I know you've never gotten a chance to see me speak. How about this? I'll buy your ticket and I'll get an extra room for you at my expense. Come down and see the speech. So is there a cost to that? Yeah, there's a little bit of a cost to it. But investing a couple $1,000s in an agent relationship that has the potential to book you for months and years to come, phenomenal use of funds, in my opinion. And they usually don't get that, nor are their bureaus willing to pay for it. So if you say something as simple as that, hey, I'm speaking in Chicago next week. How about I'll pay you, you come on my time. I'll fly you over there. We'll grab a great dinner, get to know each other a little bit, see the keynote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah, it's good.
Another one, so just backing up a second, Ben, you said like you had a great conversation with them and then they just didn't magically book you.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. Here's one way to get going on it is get specific. That's the headline, get specific. So it would go like something like this. Hey, Jim, let's say the bureau guy's Jim. Since we're talking, there's a lot of excitement. Nothing yet has come forward. Let me be helpful to you. Can I ask you, who are a couple of the biggest clients that you work with? Oh, I work with Fidelity Investment. Awesome. Cool. And so do you do like their sales conferences or do their internal conferences? What type of stuff have you been booking for them recently? Oh, I do a lot of sales events for them. Oh, cool. For their key customers. Yes. Excellent. So Jim, how about this? Let me put together a couple thoughts on that for you. Something that you might be able to put forward to Fidelity that would be specific to their needs. Is that cool with you? Oh, that'd be great, Ben. Thanks. So now maybe you create a little email. Hey, friends at Fidelity, my name is Ben. I'd love to contribute. Or maybe you send them a little paragraph or two about how your message could impact people in financial services. So instead of it being generic, like, I'm Ben, I'm awesome, please book me, you ask who are a couple of your key clients and then handcraft a couple of core messages, give them the ammunition they need to put you forward. Because now you've given that bureau an advantage. So Jim, in this fictitious example, now can call Fidelity and say, Fidelity, I have someone great for you. I don't even know if you've heard of him, but this guy Ben is awesome. Let me tell you about why he's such a good fit for you. So if you can do the heavy lifting on behalf of the bureau, so they don't have to know all the great things about you, you're the one providing it, absolutely going to make a big difference.
Yeah, that's a great one. The other thing that I find kind of works too is just anytime you have any type of marquee a piece of content or article or announcement, just send it along to your agent so they keep top of mind. They see that things are progressing, and it's also they use that to share on their socials, but also to their clients, because the clients tend to like that too, just to see that, oh, this is a relevant speaker, so they just don't know all of the press and also all the content that you're doing. So just, without bombarding them, you send them something every month or whatever, anytime there's something that's worth talking about.
Yeah, because you're reinforcing your core value. You're showing your perspective that you're a thought leader on it. I totally agree with you.
I want to go back to what you said before, Josh. I'm meeting with an agency. You know them very well out in New Jersey. They sent me to you. On Tuesday, they'll meet with their whole sales staff, and I'm going to go in there with a cheat sheet, of my strong points. And so when they're talking to a client, well, Bob does this and he does that and he's done this. So it's right there in front of them. They don't have to remember anything. They just pull it up on their computer or out of their drawer, and they can start talking about me. Make it very easy for them to sell. Give them all the information right in front of them.
That's so good. And just by the way, when you go in there, Sheldon, who is a lovely person, just came to our most recent boot camp, and he was like super enthusiastic about it and really like very excited. So when you go there and talk to them, not that this is your main lead point, obviously, but just let Sheldon know that you've worked with us, and I think it will just give an extra set of credibility.
Absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, that absolutely helps.
Yeah, cool. One other thing I wanted to share with Steve Shapiro heard this because we just with us, but Ben and Bob and Steve Smith, we've kind of built this little formula for communicating. So when you get on the call with that bureau for the first time, or Bob, when you go in there next week to see the folks in New Jersey, this little format has worked really, really well. So I'm just going to share it with you real quickly. So just think in your mind 3 columns: column A, column B, column C. Column A is the problem that companies or audiences are facing. Column B is your credibility. And column C is the end state in a perfect world if they embrace your thought leadership. So I'll give you an example. I know it's a little abstract, but again, column A, the problem that they're facing. Column B, the bridge, is about you and your expertise. And column C is the perfect world, what the world will look like for those folks if they fully embrace your message. I'll give a couple examples, but this has been working beautifully. So I just wanted to share this technique. Here's how it would sound. I help companies that are frustrated at the pace of change and overwhelmed with disruption, and they're feeling threatened by new competitors and old ones alike, really concerned that they will be able to sustain success, let alone sustain their business over time. By spending nearly 3 decades on the forefront of innovation, writing 3 books on the topic, starting building and selling 5 companies, and starting a venture capital fund, I've lived, breathed, and slept nothing but innovation over these last 3 decades. And what I help audiences do is I help them connect to their own creative roots, and I'm in column C, so that they are able to get ahead of the change, fully harness the creative brain power of their team, and ultimately create competitive advantage and sustainable success. Column A is the problem, column B is the bridge of your credibility, and column C is the ultimate end state if people embrace your thought leadership. I'll just do another example, and then maybe we could even play with it on the phone. I use a fictitious speaker in customer service. I help audiences that are really concerned that they're losing customers at an unprecedented, at an increasing rate, and they're alarmed by how disloyal customers have become, realizing that other competitors are doubling down on customer experiences and services, but maybe confused and overwhelmed of what to do next. As somebody who spent 2 decades leading customer service for big brands, and someone who's also written the predominant book in the industry about customer service, I help my clients and audiences reconnect with the notion of service. And I help create these magical experiences that drive loyalty, drive retention, and drive share of wallet for many years into the future, even in a highly competitive environment. Again, sloppy, but you'll see the pattern. Column A, B, and C. Problem, your credibility, ideal state. Make sense?
I love that. It's so succinct. It's perfect. It's
So-
giving them what Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So just since we're having fun among friends, does anyone want to take a stab? It doesn't have to be perfect. I know we're just ripping
Yeah,
on this for the first time. Anyone want to give it a shot?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Awesome.
So I talked to doctors about how to improve the patient. Go back. Problem A. Doctors are under a lot of pressure to improve the patient experience. It's going to affect how much money they make. It's going to affect whether they're able to retain patients. And yet they're stuck with the problem that they have no time to do this. Well, I was in medical practice for 35 years, and I got top ratings from my patients. And I bring a whole new perspective on how to do this to doctors by thinking of the patient examination as a performance. And if they do that, they're going to have more satisfied patients. They're going to enjoy practicing more. They'll protect their incomes, and they'll go home each day saying, I can't wait to come back to the office tomorrow.
Bob, that couldn't have been better. That was, excuse me, it's fucking awesome. Sorry. It was awesome. Seriously. Chills down my spine. Awesome. But seriously, when you say that to a bureau, instead of like, hey, I've been a physician for 35 years, not that you would, but like that was phenomenal. Use that formula. I'm telling you, it'll knock people's socks off. Even if you're on a pre-booking call. If Pfizer is considering hiring you and 3 other people or whatever, you say that, it's just going to be the edge up. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Josh. That's a beautiful. I was wondering how to structure it, and you just gave me the structure perfectly.
Anyone else want to take a shot just for having fun? Amazing. Quiet speakers. All right, well, we'll keep going, but hopefully you understand the principle of that. And that 3-step formula, I would try practicing it. Like practice it as if you're giving a speech, because frankly, that's the speech that you give in order to get on stage to give other speeches. And I would open, like if you're walking into a bureau or a potential client, start with that. And it's just a lovely formula. Okay. I had a couple other fast strategies to throw out just for discussion purposes. And of course, happy to answer any questions that are on your mind. Okay, I have 5 strategies for you today. Strategy number 1, align with like-minded speakers. Perfect example that I can share, and Steve Shapiro, hope you're okay with sharing this. So Steve Shapiro talks about innovation. I talk about innovation. Beautiful. I love him. He's happy with us. I believe his message is incredible. Awesome. So now we've got a nice little relationship where if someone comes to me and says, hey, I need a speech on innovation, and I say, oh shit, I'm booked that day, I can say, instead of saying, hey, thanks, but no thanks, I can say, can I introduce you to Steve Shapiro? He's awesome. And then similarly, Steve can do the same with me. So by aligning with like-minded speakers, you're able to create another channel of opportunity. So for you, it could be other speakers at your fee category, whomever is on the call. It could be a content-related speaking alignment, but the idea is aligning with other speakers can be a very powerful way to drive initial business and get the phone ringing. Cool.
One just thing to add on that, one of the things that I've been doing as well is, if it makes sense and it's actually appropriate, is afterwards, once you make a relationship with the client, is saying, hey, obviously you can't go and speak back there at their conference for a number of years, but you can make a suggestion. Hey, if you're looking for another speaker, my friend is amazing. I know that he would do a great job here. So, just kind of like giving that little recommendation afterwards once everyone's all just had a great experience, and you can kind of hand it off.
100%. And by the way, even those that speak on different topics, we just started doing this more systematically, but let's say you're on a kickoff call with a big client and you're the opening keynote. We might just say to them, have you locked your other speakers in for the event? And they say, oh, actually, no, the second keynote later on, we haven't figured out. You might just say, oh, that's cool. I know a lot of speakers. Maybe would you like a recommendation? And they say, oh yeah, we're really looking for somebody on leadership and execution. And I might say, oh, that's awesome. Let me tell you about Steve Smith. You're not becoming a bureau. I'm not suggesting in any way that we compete with bureaus. And I certainly wouldn't do this if there's a bureau involved in the mix, to be super clear. However, if you're doing a direct gig and you can make a recommendation to somebody, first of all, you're helping a fellow speaker who will help you back. You could, of course, arrange an economic agreement, but also you're helping that client because you've now added value above and beyond the work that you're doing. Similarly, you have a great call. Hey, that was awesome. Thanks so much. We loved your speech, Steve Smith. You might say, thanks so much. Hey, have you thought about next year? Or if you talk to them mid-year, hey, have you locked in your speaker for next year? Let me tell you about Ben. He's awesome. Anyway, that type of reciprocity I find to work really well, whether there's a formal economic arrangement in place or not. And it's one that I'd recommend.
I had a question, a general question, is Krister. Does anybody have any experience of using podcasts to as a guest, not as a podcast interviewer, but using that as a marketing tool to generate interest around keynotes?
I'm happy to share a perspective on that. I've probably been on 100 podcasts, and I think I've gotten a grand total of 0 keynotes or leads as a result of them. I'm not saying don't do it, by the way, because part of it is sharing the message into the world and helping people. I'm sure people have bought books or whatever, but I've never been able to track an appearance on a podcast back to even an inquiry for a keynote.
Yeah, Josh, it's Vince Molinaro. Hey there.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm just doing some podcasts, and what I've been told is it probably doesn't lead to speaking, but it does get the word out and probably drives book sales primarily. So I haven't done enough to, Krister, to see what the return is at this point. But and I just find they're so diverse to do. Some are really good. Some you don't even understand the questions they're throwing at you, but you do them anyways.
Well, thanks for jumping in there on that. And by the way, I still do them. So to be clear, I don't think it's a bad thing to do them. I'm just saying I wouldn't put a huge expectation in your mind that it will lead to keynotes. One of the reasons to do them is it gives you practice answering questions. So if you get really good, you can try out new material on those podcasts. You can get really crisp in answering questions. And then some of that experience will translate when you're on the stage and someone asks you a question from the audience. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to do. I just don't know that it will generate specific keynote opportunities.
Yeah. I found it's great for just brand building. You know, like if I do a big podcast, you'll get 1,000, 1,500 more followers, you know, and you continue to do that. I think you just keep the bar high with the actual podcast that you're doing. So you know that they have a good reach and it's a good use of your time. But in terms of just kind of building yourself out as a thought leader and building your socials, yeah, I found it to be really helpful for that.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. A couple other strategies for you. Well, again, these are just some ideas, random ideas. I think most of the folks on this call have one, but I've seen others that don't have a dedicated speaking site. So like maybe they are a business person or they have a brand that's more diverse than just speaking, and they have one site that represents all these different things. Or you work at a big company. My strong suggestion is have a dedicated speaking site. And the reason is, I think to be taken in serious contention, especially in a competitive shootout against other speakers, it shows that you have depth in this category, that it's not just a side project for you or you're not moonlighting, but you have the credit of a real speaker. So it doesn't have to be 900 pages to be clear, but I do recommend that you have a dedicated speaking site. Just since he's on the phone, to give a little credit, one that I particularly like is Krister's site. I think it's very, very strong. It's clear. It's Chris. We helped with it a little bit in full disclosure, but he does a bunch of other things, coaching and all kinds of cool stuff. But now he has a dedicated speaking site, and I think that will really continue to help.
I like it too, Josh. You guys did a good job.
Thank you. Cool. Next one for you is, and I just got this idea this last week, which is so great about this sort of Three Ring Circus community. We're all helping each other. But Tim Sanders, who came back for the second time at our boot camp, told me something that was kind of mind blowing. So I was literally this morning on 2 pre-booking calls, which means that, down to the couple finalists and they're, trying to decide, and I'm giving it my all, trying to sell the speech. And they were both phone calls. Tim says to me last week, he says, I've tracked it. And when I get on a phone call for a pre-booking call versus a video conference for a pre-booking call, I nearly triple my rates if it's a video conference. He said, it's so easy to set up. Use Zoom or Skype or whatever you feel like using. Send the person a link. And if they say, hey, can we hop on a call? You said, I'd love to. Hey, would you mind hopping on a video call instead? Very few people are going to object to it. You hop on a video call, and obviously we're the product. We're the keynote speaker. And you can get a lot across through your phone and through your voice, but not nearly as much as you can if there's a visual. And so a call like this, as it wasn't hard to set up. And we're going to start doing that as standard practice. Even if they ask for a call, we're just going to request respectfully, can we make it a video call? And Tim was telling me again that his closing rates have gone through the roof as a result.
Great idea.
That's smart. That was a good one.
Awesome.
Cool. Next one I had for you was we've been playing around with doing custom videos for it's called high probability holds. So if it's just some random hold from a bureau, hey, TBD date or something for some client, we won't do it. But if there's a specific opportunity that we think is good, hey, there's an event for Land Rover on September 19th, and you're in their top 3 consideration set. What we've been doing is this. We come into our little green screen studio here, which, full disclosure, is like the size of a walk-in closet. And we crank out a quick look into the camera video that's specific to that client. On either side of it, we've created a bumper, and I'm happy to email out to the group what a bumper is, but it's basically a beautifully produced, which is not expensive at all, 15 seconds on the front and 15 seconds on the back. Think of it like a theme for like a TV show. So it's fast moving in music and like some stock footage up front, and same thing on the back. It's got my logo on it. So it creates energy and professionalism. And then I hop in this little studio and make a look into the camera video that goes something like this. Hello, my friends at Land Rover. I would be delighted to be your keynote speaker this coming September 19th in Long Beach, California. I appreciate your consideration. Let me just tell you a few things on why I think this might be an ideal fit. So then I spend just, in a humble, sincere way saying, hey, I grew up in Detroit. I'm an automotive guy. I can inject energy and inspiration, but also provide practical tools that are actionable so your audience will walk away feeling good, but also knowing what to do next, that we're easy to deal with and flexible. So I just kind of share my key talking points with a lot of energy and sincerity into the camera. It takes us, even with editing time, under 30 minutes to do this. And we found that by doing these pre-keynote videos, it doesn't close every deal, but there's a marked improvement in the close rates when we do them. So the investment of, in this case, less than 30 minutes is totally worth it if there's a legitimate gig on the table. It's basically a mechanism to improve our closing rates.
I just got off a call with a guy who does these podcasts, and I don't know if he was actually referring to Tim Sanders or somebody else, and he was saying that, and maybe it was Michael Hyatt, one of these bloggers, and he was saying that their data of the response rates that they would get on videos they would post when they were just in their homes versus against a green screen was like the engagement was significantly higher when it felt more, less produced or more, without the green screen. It's just an interesting, because of course, right after I bought all the green screen paint and everything to set up a green screen in my basement.
So on that point, again, it might depend on the context of that, Krister. I think if it's a, hey, hire me as a speaker, I think the production value actually matters. Because if it's sort of sloppy and not in an iPhone or something, it is authentic. Okay, I'm in my home on the iPad, but that's what they're thinking they're buying. So to a degree, that video is a representation of what they're about to spend a whole bunch of money on. And so I kind of like the idea of a beautifully produced bumper on either side of it, as well as like a higher quality shot. That's why there's lights and such in here that make it good quality. So not to disagree necessarily, but that's been our experience.
Yeah, definitely. Krister, I'm curious, what was the content, what type of content were they talking about? They were talking about like for clients or for social, or like just for? It
was for social media kind of posts.
Yeah.
So
I think that totally makes sense. I mean, I don't think that people will respond to, I guess it just depends on the type of content, but generally I agree with Josh. I think it just depends on the context of the content. So for the client, it probably makes sense to be more high production value. But, if you're doing content that actually will feel like it just resonates when it's more intimate and it's more natural and people are not trying to be high production value, like Gary Vee and all that stuff, like Gary Vee stuff wouldn't work with, if it's high production value when he's just talking in the back of his car and someone's filming him on their iPhone right next to him. That really works for him. And that's the type of content that resonates with a lot of people. But I think it's something to keep in mind, but I'd take it with a grain of salt because it depends on the type of content that you're creating in the audience.
Yeah, it's a good point. Thanks for the insights.
So the last
Josh, how long are these? Hey,
Oh,
Josh, how long are these videos? Couple minutes?
Couple minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. And like
Okay,
a politician, you kind of have your talking points in mind. So whatever your particular talking points are that you want to reinforce in just a really authentic conversational way, because what you're doing is you're giving them a little piece of you that is custom to them so they know that you give a damn, that is a sort of personal, but also it's going to jump off the page way more than the others that will just have a bio that they're comparing you to. So it's a good way to differentiate yourself from the competitive set. We had one, funny enough, and we literally heard that. They said, listen, they go, look, honestly, I was on the fence between you and 2 other people. The other 2 were more famous, and I was really thinking about going with them because they're household names. But then I saw this video that you did, And I said, wow, this guy really cares. He's going to invest in our thing. I love his energy. I couldn't really see it from your bio, but I saw it from that video, and we just chose you as a result specifically of that video.
Could you send us a sample, or if anybody else on the line has samples of things they've done? Sometimes it helps just see, what people have done.
We will send you a handful of them. Hey, Connor, do me a favor. Can you just grab a screenshot of everyone so I know who to send it to?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Yes, we'll send it today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the last little strategy tip for you. So meeting planners talk to other meeting planners. And so I've been thinking recently, what can I do to just over the moon delight my hosts and make it so that I'm such the obvious choice that they want to tell all their friends about it? Like, how do I make them a raving fan? So a couple of things I've been doing recently, I've kind of added to my little arsenal. First thing I do is, if I can, in the pre-booking calls or whatever, sort of ask a little bit of something personal about them. You have kids, what do you do as a hobby? And then I try to like really work that. So it feels not just like a business transaction, it's more of a relationship. The other thing that I'm doing more of, not always, I'm not perfect at this, but more of, is before we had a kickoff call and then I just show up at the event. I'm trying now to touch base with them a couple days before. Hey, Jenny, can I hop on the phone with you for 5 minutes? Listen, I know you're busy. I'm not going to take a bunch of your time, Jenny. I just wanted to double check in. Anything changed on your end? Anything that I should know about? Anything that I can do to be of extra service to you? Oh, no, Josh, that's awesome. Thanks so much for the call. Can't wait to see you next Tuesday. Okay, great, cool. So just a little extra touch point of service. Doesn't take long. You can do it from an airport, but you're showing value and you're establishing the relationship. Then a couple other things that I do. The minute I land, I text. I mean, you're waiting on the runway anyway. Why not? You've already got Jenny, the meeting planner's cell phone. I send a quick text. Hey, Jenny, just want to let you know I landed here at LAX. Looks like the weather's great. Right on time. I'm going to get a great night's sleep. Can't wait to see you in the morning. Unless there's anything else you need from me, let me know. So you think about Jenny's world. She's totally stressed out. Her CEO's coming the next day. All their big clients are going to be there. Just to know that you're on the ground, to know that you're safe, that she doesn't have to worry about you. Wow, that stands out from every other speaker she's ever had. Then I'm going to meet her at 7:30 in the morning for the sound check. Send her a text at 6:45. Hey, Jenny, what do you take in your coffee? You want me to grab you a Starbucks? 9 times out of 10, they say, no, I already got anything. I don't drink coffee or whatever else. Just that little extra text. Wow, you're of service to them. So then I walk in and say, Jenny, it's so great to meet you in person. I feel like we're old friends. That's been my line as of late. I feel like we're old friends. Think about what you're doing. You're setting the stage that you're old friends. You're not just some speaker they hired for 20 minutes. You're old friends now. Anyway, so I do this type of thing, and I just keep looking for little extra ways that take no extra time or very little extra time, but that deepen the relationship with the Jennys of the world. I walk off stage. Jenny, listen, thank you so much. It was awesome. Is there anything else that I can do to be helpful to you? No, that was great. Listen, if there's any questions that come up, if there's anything at all that you need, here's my cell phone number again, just to make sure you have it. Please let me know how I can be helpful to you. Congratulations on an awesome event. Then I'm on the airplane. I'm sending Jenny a thank you email. Then we might send her a gift, like it's a brand specific gift. So all those little reinforcements don't take a lot of time and energy and money. But all of a sudden, Jenny, when her meeting planner colleague says, who have you booked recently? And let's say Krister did all that. She'll say, oh man, I book speakers all the time, but let me tell you about Krister. And what she doesn't say to her friends is, Krister brought me in a Starbucks with 2 creams. She says, Krister was the best guy to work with ever. He was on his game. He delighted people on the stage, and wow, was he a pleasure. So it's easy for us to get caught up in our own heads, and we think, we're just the hired work or whatever. But man, if you can build a little bit of those relationships and really kind of nurture them along the way, that goes so far. I can't even begin to tell you how far it goes.
100%. The other thing that I find works is just bringing a book and, signing a book for them, because these are people that generally don't get that type of attention. So you do something special, or bring them another gift and just say, hey, this is for you. This is for the president of the organization. And that seems to go a long way as well.
Love that.
How do you? I've had maybe like 3 or 4 pre-booking calls, and none of them have converted. And then often it's the person who calls. I have a short conversation with them, and then they bring someone else into the conversation. Any tips on how to make sure? I know the basic sales things like who's involved in the decision and things like that. My sense is it's usually that second person that they're bringing in that's the real decision maker. Any tips on how to navigate those things and increase success rates?
Sure. So in terms of what to say on the call?
well, let's say the most recent one was I kind of had already given a little bit of the pitch to the person who was, just charged with going out to find people to talk to. But I knew that the other person was really probably the decision maker. So it was actually, I started kind of giving a little bit about myself, and it was like I was repeating myself from the first person. I don't know. It was just even like starting to ask questions. Like now I remember it. I was asking like, so what are you interested in, and what kind of experience? And then the other first person started jumping in and answering those questions, almost like I told you. Like I was trying to really just move the locus of attention to the other decision maker, which wasn't successful.
Well, without knowing all the intricacies of that, I can share a couple of things that I do, and I'm sure others would have some advice as well. If it is a second call, the first thing I do is try to be really complimentary to the person on the first call, because probably the second call is the boss and the first call is the not boss. And so if you can make the not boss shine to the boss, then the not boss is going to be really supportive of you. So just using this example, because Connor's with me right now, I might say something like this. And let's say Jordan's the boss. Hey, Jordan, so great to hop on the call with you. Listen, before we start, let me just tell you, I had a great conversation with Connor. Wow, is he awesome. I got so much context from him. He was so thoughtful. Connor, listen, thanks again for setting this up. I really appreciate talking to you for a second time. I just made Connor look like a rock star to Jordan, his boss. Everybody's happy. No harm done. Now Connor's going to be my advocate instead of getting in the way. So that's one little tip.
I guess maybe the other thing I could have done that I didn't do is say, hey, so Connor's already given me a lot of background, but I'd like to hear it from the horse's mouth. I'd like to hear it from your perspective. What's your perspective on what your goals were? Because I didn't present it that way. He kind of just deferred back to the first person.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. And again, any way you can make it personal. So you might say something like, again, using my Connor and Jordan example, Connor, let's say I just said how great Connor is. I might say, and Jordan, listen, it's wonderful to talk to you. I noticed, because of course I did my research, that you are you're the SVP of sales, and before that you were in HR. So I'm really curious, of course, to hear how that career transition was for you. But even before we get to that, Connor gave me an excellent briefing. I do think I have a good fundamental sense of what's going on here, but I'd love to hear specifically from you, kind of your key objectives and your perspective on this event, such that if we do move forward, I can custom craft my remarks to make the biggest possible impact.
Okay.
One important piece of sales advice that I heard somewhere is that in a sales call or in a sales meeting, whoever does the most talking leaves with the product. Meaning that if we, as the salespeople, do all the talking, we're going to leave with our speech. Whereas if we let them do all the talking, they're going to buy the speech. So to the extent that you can get them to talk, and as Chris was saying, ask them questions, get them to talk about what's important to them. Nobody, after all of us, I'm showing it right now, our most favorite sound is the sound of our name and the sound of our voice. And so if we get them talking and talk about their interests, they're going to look more favorably upon us.
Perfectly said. Cool. So any other questions or thoughts on these strategies, or I kind of just want to open it up for random discussion here among our Three Ring Circus family.
I had maybe, I don't want to monopolize. I have one more question, then I'll shut up, I promise. So I wonder if you had any thoughts on, I feel like sometimes, to Robert's point, that I do talk, and it's the things that I say that I end up disqualifying myself. Any thoughts on what are the most, if anyone has mistakes, the most common ways of how we can end up disqualifying ourselves in what we say in those pre-booking calls?
Well, two thoughts on that. One is, I would make a list, Krister, and keep in front of you a bullet point list, like things to say and things not to say. So, we could brainstorm here even, or separately, and just so you have that list, you kind of know your key talking points that you can always get back to, and then the traps to avoid. I think the traps to avoid, as we've talked about a little bit, is anything that slows the decision process down. I just try to make it, like I had a call earlier today, and they're like, hey, there's 3 topics on your website, and we like a lot of both, and which do you think would be best for us? I tried to move that decision after the sale. So what I said is, I custom craft every keynote, so you don't have to decide that right now. And before I can even make a thoughtful prescription, what I would rather do is, let's see if it's the right fit. If it is, we'll have a kickoff call in which I can ask a bunch of questions. My team and I will do our homework. We'll learn a lot more. And then I can be much more deliberate in my recommendation of what would be best for you. So the only thing I really did there is a fancy way of taking as something that would slow the decision process down now and pushing it to after the sale. So one thing that I think can confuse a sale, can hurt a sale, to answer your question, is injecting friction that adds more decision. Because now they're like, if they think they have to choose A, B, or C, now they got to go back to the boss and see which one that person wants and go back to the committee. And there's a lot of ways that it could derail itself as opposed to trying to remove that decision till after the sale is made. Anyone else have any tips on like what not to say on a pre-booking call? Is a good question, Krister.
Well, I'll just throw my 2 cents in here. I think in these calls, it gets very easy for us as speakers to speak. And I think the best thing we can do is listen, use the doctor frame, which basically means we treat somebody as the patient and we need to get as much information. I remember advice, I'm putting the finishing touches on my new demo video, and somebody gave some great advice. They said, the demo video is not to sell you, it's not to eliminate you. Or to not eliminate, whatever it is. You want to make sure you don't get eliminated. So as we've been working on it, we say, what can we cut out? And that to me is always the best thing, is less is definitely more when it comes to these things, and only talk about the things that are going to help you stand out.
Great advice. Any other questions, observations from any other folks on the line? And what's on your mind?
How are your twins?
Oh, Bob, thank you so much for asking. Actually, they are awesome. You know, for those that don't know, I have twins they're almost 2 now. They were born at 26 weeks, spent over 100 days in the NICU, but they're both totally happy and healthy. Thank you for asking. They're walking around, they're hilarious, and we've got their big 2.0 party coming up in next month.
Excellent.
2.0.
What else is on your guys' mind? Again, the whole goal here is, of course, to be interactive and of service to our Three Ring Circus community.
I'm going to sort of be doing a new speaker reel and website. So this sort of like level up. You have an amazing reel and site, and I forgot who put those together for you.
Yeah, so thank you for saying that. Funny enough, as we always are working on, all of us, we're always trying to reimagine and reinvent. So we're currently kind of ripping it apart and trying to start over for the, you know, not that ours is bad, but we're trying to, you know, make it better. The person who did our website is a woman named Paige Ehrlich, who I'm happy to make an introduction. I'm sorry, video. I'm happy to make an introduction to. She's lovely. We have the capacity to produce some videos internally. So if it's a sort of smaller scale project, we can show you some demos of what we can do. We're happy to help with that. And if you want other recommendations, we can provide that as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yep. The website, we had a designer, freelance designer, do the design of it. And we wrote the copy and everything internally. We just engaged a very cool agency because not that we couldn't do a good job, but I'm trying to think about how do we take it to a whole new level? How do we 10X it? And so this is an agency that I've worked with for 20 plus years in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Also happy to make an introduction to them. They're crazy fun and cool.
Okay, so they're designing and building your website.
They are, well, TBD. Right now what they're doing is helping us with the overall messaging and positioning and strategy and everything. And then we'll see if they're going to be physically building it out or if we'll just have a freelancer crank it out once we have the blueprints.
Cool. Do you still work with your pal that did the SEO?
Yes, he's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
He's
he seemed great. I just, I figured that I should probably just wait till I had a better product before I started investing and pushing people towards it. But that would be the next step as well, I guess, after the site.
Yes. And by the way, for everyone on the call, if you guys need any resource, we share everything that we have so that we don't keep any secrets. If there's any, like that guy's name is Ian Sabag, happy to make an introduction. But if you need that or anybody else or recommendations, always please let us know. We're always here.
Terrific.
Cool.
Josh, who was the SEO person that you work with?
His name is Ian Sabag, I-A-N. And how do you spell Sabag? S-A-B-B-A-G. And what we'll do is, since we're going to be sending out those demo videos, we'll send out his contact information to those people on the call today.
Thank you, Josh.
Sure.
That's great. Thank you very much. These are great tips, Josh. Really helpful.
Good, no problem. Trying to think of anything else of interest. This week I started in Barcelona, Spain. The time zones are always a little screwy. My sound check was at 1 a.m. Eastern, so I got a little goofy on that. And yesterday I was in Chicago, and then I'm off to Connecticut later today. So it's staying busy on this end. Hopefully everyone is having a good run as well.
Awesome. I have one question actually, Josh. If you have a second,
Sure.
I'm doing my first meeting planner conference, so so a pretty good opportunity. Have you? I imagine that you've done those before. So speaking to a group of meeting planners.
Yes. Yeah, it's like MPI or someone like that.
Yes, there's like CMP Conclave in Alabama, and then one in Ojai with Preferred Hotels. So it must be like hotel meeting planners.
So one suggestion would be, that's a good one to invest in, if as long as it's a decent sized audience, in really customizing it. So I'll give you an example. I did one for MPI a while back in Toronto for like 1,000 meeting planners. And that was when I really invested extra time, because I know that all those people will likely be potential clients. And so I found all these cool examples of innovation in meeting planning. Hey, look at this cool thing that they did in Brazil when they did this fundraising event. And I just kept reinforcing. I went extra deep on customizing for that audience.
Right.
Not only is it helpful to them and they have a good, like emotional connection, they say, wow, this guy customized so much for us. He's probably going to customize if I hire him at my own company.
Awesome.
The other thing I would suggest you do, Ben, is anything that you can do to get any type of connection with them, it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say, hey, I put together a website at such and such.com, just enter this password and or even text me right now, and then I'll respond and I'll send you a copy of my book and I'll send you this or whatever. Whatever the incentive is to initiate a direct relationship with them, again, that's one where it's worth the investment.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you can send them your ongoing feedback, or next time you're featured in some publication or whatever, just to build an ongoing relationship with them, I'd recommend is worth investing in.
Yeah, the book is a good call. And maybe even just, going early to hang out at the conference.
Love it. One other thought, just since I'm randomly thinking about it now. So you've done all these bucket list, crazy, amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
Like crazy, shooting hoops with Obama and being on Oprah and all this other stuff. What if you had like a contest or something where you said, hey, send me your contact information and I'm going to pick one person here today and I'm going to help them achieve something on their bucket list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
totally. No, it's funny.
like, not only are you giving your principles, which are awesome, but you're like, I'm going to personally help one person. Like, I'm going to coach you on how, like, you're going to pick one thing on your bucket list. I'm going to help you get there. You're not guaranteeing you're going to get there.
Oh, got it.
But wow, like, who doesn't want to respond to that? I mean, from the guy who shot hoops with Obama, and I feel like, gosh, because everyone in the audience has some dream.
Yeah.
I want to be an extra on a movie or something like that. Great. But if I think of you as the person that can get me there, I'm going to reach out. Now you've got a point of contact, and whether you get them there or not, but you help them through your process, you're gonna delight that person and the audience as a whole. Even them thinking like someone in this audience is going to be able to achieve something extraordinary today. Like, that's just a cool thing.
Yeah, got it. So you mean like actually on stage invite them to contact me via email or whatever, just to say, listen, I want to help you with something on your list, or choose someone leading up to it. Because what I've done before is I'll have people submit their list items and then we'll realize those dreams live, sort of, so the company will pay for and choose the employee they want to help, and then we'll call them up. But so I was thinking about that when you said the impetus of it. So do you mean, what's the opt-in? I just missed that part.
Yeah, and well, by the way, do however you think is best. My mind was going though to like a sweepstakes kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, hey, everybody, thanks for allowing me to speak today. Go to this website and put your name and email address in there. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mail everybody a signed copy of my book. I'm going to give them a starter kit on how to achieve the impossible, this cool little box thing that I made. So you're going to get that in the mail. And I'm going to select one person from that list, and I'm going to be their personal do the impossible coach. I'm going to help them achieve something on their bucket list. I'll spend up to 6 weeks helping you get there. Not full time, but like you'd help them over the course of 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me, it's an irresistible offer. I guess that's what I'm saying in a nutshell. Give them an irresistible offer to engage with you.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's great. As a gastroenterologist, I'll offer them colonoscopies.
Who can resist that?
Yeah.
Amazing.
You'll never, your inbox will be overflowing.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's not all that's overflowing.
Boom.
Cool. Yeah, that's great.
This has been great, Josh. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
As always, look forward to staying in touch. If we can be helpful in any way, please let us know. And here's to everybody's continued success.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
Josh.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.